Long before the crowded modern cities of Britain rose from the soil and long before historians divided truth from legend, there existed a story whispered across windswept hillsides and around the crackling fires of ancient halls. It was a story that stirred courage in the hearts of warriors and comfort in the hearts of common folk. It was a story about a leader who stood against the chaos of his age. A hero who would one day be known as King Arthur. This story has traveled across centuries, carried from poet to poet and scribe to scribe, reshaped and retold until it became one of the most powerful legends of the Western world. But behind every legend lies the pulse of something human, something real, something that once mattered deeply to the people who first spoke it. And today we journey into that world to discover why Arthur's shadow still stretches across time. Imagine a Britain not yet marked by stone castles or royal courts. Imagine a land fractured after the fall of Rome, when order had vanished and foreign invaders pressed in from all sides. Tribes clashed. Kingdoms rose and fell. Fear and uncertainty shaped everyday life. In this world, stories were more than entertainment. They were maps of survival, reminders of what people hoped for and what they feared. And in this landscape, the figure of Arthur emerged not simply as a king but as an answer to a longing. A longing for unity, strength and righteousness during an age drenched in disorder. But Arthur did not begin as the majestic crowned king with shining armor that later stories would portray. In the earliest accounts, he appears as a warrior of extraordinary skill, a leader whose presence on the battlefield could turn despair into victory. Some early Welsh texts speak of him as a dux bellorum, a leader of battles rather than a traditional king. This subtle difference reveals something important. To the earliest storytellers, Arthur was a figure of action, not ceremony. He was the champion who rode into darkness when others faltered. As the centuries unfolded, Arthur's legend grew richer and more complex. Poets added new characters, new conflicts and new meanings until the story became a vast tapestry woven by countless hands. It is this layered evolution that makes Arthur both mysterious and endlessly fascinating. When we try to understand him, we must sift through fragments of myth and slivers of potential history. We must listen to the echoes of a world that no longer exists and piece together what its people valued most. To do this, we must begin by stepping into the imagined landscape of Arthur's world. Picture rolling green hills dotted with wooden villages. Forests thick with mist where travelers moved cautiously, aware that danger often waited between the trees. Small kingdoms ruled by chieftains competed for territory and loyalty. Roman roads still cut across the island, but the empire that built them had crumbled, leaving behind only stones and memories. Saxon raiders approached the eastern coasts, testing the fractured land's defenses. It was a moment when heroes were needed, even if they had to be shaped from stories rather than flesh. In this environment, a young leader rising above chaos would have seemed miraculous. People would have spoken his name with hope. They would have repeated stories of his victories until those victories grew larger than life. That is how legends begin. A spark of truth fanned by the breath of countless voices until it becomes a flame that refuses to go out. Arthur's world was not only defined by war. It was also defined by an intricate system of loyalty, hospitality and honor. The bonds between warriors and their leaders were sacred. Oaths were taken seriously. A man's word could carry as much weight as his sword. When Arthur appears in early literature, this cultural framework surrounds him. He is a leader who inspires loyalty not through fear but through justice and valor. His followers are not merely soldiers. They are companions bound by shared purpose and a deep respect for their leader. This ideal would later evolve into the Round Table, symbolizing equality between warriors who fought not for personal gain but for the greater good. Before this symbol fully developed, poets spoke of Arthur as a man who faced supernatural horrors as easily as human enemies. He battled giants, monsters and creatures of myth, reflecting the early medieval imagination where the boundary between the natural and supernatural world was thin. In these stories, Arthur's power came not from divine ancestry but from exceptional courage. He represented the belief that humanity could triumph over forces beyond human understanding if guided by honor and bravery. As the Arthurian tradition expanded, new characters were introduced to shape and deepen the story. One of the earliest was Merlin, the enigmatic figure whose presence helped lift Arthur from warrior to king. Merlin was not simply a wizard. He was a bridge between ancient druidic traditions and medieval storytelling. His wisdom connected the mortal world with the mysterious realms beyond it. Through Merlin, Arthur became more than a leader. He became a chosen figure destined for greatness. Merlin's guidance brought Arthur to the moment that would define his legacy. A moment that storytellers across generations described with awe. It began with a sword embedded in a stone. Not an ordinary sword, but a symbol woven with magic and destiny. When leaders and noblemen attempted to pull the sword free, none succeeded. Only Arthur, a young and seemingly ordinary boy, accomplished the task, revealing a truth long hidden. Greatness does not always announce itself with grandeur. Sometimes it arrives quietly, surprising even those who witness it. This scene became one of the most iconic images in Western storytelling because it spoke to a timeless desire. The desire to believe that destiny can lift someone from obscurity into the light. That greatness can come from unexpected places. Arthur's rise through the sword in the stone captured this hope perfectly and transformed him into a figure recognized far beyond Britain's borders. Once crowned, Arthur faced the monumental task of shaping a fractured land into a unified kingdom. His reign came to symbolize an age of justice, chivalry, and noble deeds. But these ideals did not exist in the earliest versions of the story. They were gradual additions introduced by later poets who wanted Arthur's world to reflect their own visions of moral perfection. In reality, the historical landscape was far harsher, filled with political tension and constant threats. Yet the legend softened the edges of this world, painting Arthur's rule as a golden age that people wished had existed. Characters like Guinevere, Lancelot, Gawain, Morgana, and Mordred emerged to shape the drama of Arthur's life. They brought human emotion, conflict, betrayal, and redemption into the legend, transforming it from a simple heroic tale into a vast emotional journey. Through their stories, Arthur's legend explored themes of love, loyalty, temptation, pride, and downfall. These themes resonated because they were universal. They reflected the struggles that all people face regardless of era or culture. Guinevere, Arthur's queen, represented grace and inner conflict. She was a symbol of both beauty and tragedy. Lancelot, the greatest of all knights, embodied honor entwined with forbidden love, creating one of the most powerful emotional dilemmas in literature. Gawain represented unwavering loyalty. Morgana symbolized the darker forces at play in the kingdom. And Mordred, Arthur's eventual enemy, represented the tragic cycle of destiny that even the greatest heroes cannot escape. The tension woven between these characters shaped the legend's central tragedy. Arthur stood for unity, yet his kingdom fractured from within. He represented justice, yet he was betrayed by those closest to him. His story is not one of unbroken triumph but of human vulnerability. And it is this vulnerability that makes the legend timeless. People do not remember Arthur only because he fought battles. They remember him because he reflects both the greatness and fragility of human aspiration. Arthur's battles against the Saxons became legendary throughout the island. The most famous of these was the Battle of Badon, where he is said to have achieved a decisive victory. Historians still debate whether Arthur truly fought at Badon or whether the story has grown beyond its origins. But the legend holds that his leadership brought hope to a struggling people. Victory at Badon became a symbol of resistance, a reminder that unity could overcome invasion. Under Arthur's rule, the creation of the Round Table stood as a beacon of equality. Unlike other kings who sat above their warriors, Arthur chose a circular table so that no man held a position superior to another. This simple image carried enormous symbolic weight. It represented a new kind of leadership based not on hierarchy but on shared responsibility. It was perhaps the most influential idea associated with Arthur. For centuries, writers and leaders drew inspiration from it, imagining what a just society could look like. But no golden age lasts forever. As the legend deepens, tension rises. Lancelot and Guinevere's forbidden love weakens the unity of the kingdom. Arthur, torn between justice and compassion, is forced into impossible decisions. Morgana's schemes fuel chaos. Mordred's ambition grows. The kingdom begins to crumble, not from foreign invasion but from human weakness. This narrative of internal collapse reflects a profound truth recognized by ancient storytellers. Great kingdoms often fall not because of external enemies but because of wounds inflicted from within. The final conflict between Arthur and Mordred at Camlann marks the end of the legend's central arc. It is a moment filled with emotional weight. Father and son, enemy and kin, destiny and tragedy collide in a single devastating battle. The outcome leaves Arthur mortally wounded, carried away to the mystical Isle of Avalon, where he is said to rest until Britain needs him again. This ending transformed Arthur from a historical possibility into a mythic promise. A king who never truly dies. A leader who may return in the hour of greatest need. This promise helped the legend survive across centuries. It allowed generations to project their hopes onto Arthur. In moments of turmoil, people revived the idea that a great leader might return to restore order. This reflects a deeper psychological need. Myths do not merely entertain. They provide emotional anchors during uncertainty. They allow societies to imagine renewal even when surrounded by darkness. But the legend's appeal does not rest only on hope. It also rests on the complexity of its characters and the profound themes embedded throughout the narrative. The story explores the balance between power and morality, between fate and free will, between desire and duty. It reveals how fragile even the noblest ideals can be when tested by human imperfection. These themes transcend time, giving the legend relevance long after the medieval world faded. Arthur's story also evolved through the influence of various cultures. Celtic mythology shaped the earliest versions, weaving magic, nature, and heroic tradition into the tale. Later French writers added romantic love and chivalry, giving the legend its polished medieval form. English poets refined the narrative, further intertwining national identity with Arthur's legacy. Each adaptation reveals as much about its storytellers as it does about Arthur himself. This is one reason the legend feels so vast. It carries the imprint of many minds, many centuries, and many interpretations. While some characters remained consistent, others changed dramatically depending on the storyteller. Guinevere in some tales was loyal and strong. In others she was conflicted and tragic. Lancelot sometimes represented perfect knighthood and other times a symbol of flawed humanity. Merlin appeared as a wise guide but also as a figure burdened by his knowledge of the future. These shifting portrayals demonstrate the flexibility of myth. Legends endure because they can be reshaped to reflect changing values. As we explore this legend deeper, we begin to understand how myth serves as a kind of cultural mirror. Through Arthur's rise and fall, medieval society examined its own ideals of leadership, loyalty, and morality. Later generations used the legend to reinforce emerging concepts of chivalry and courtly love. Victorian writers revived Arthur as a moral exemplar. Modern storytellers portray him as a symbol of unity in fragmented times. Each interpretation emphasizes different aspects of the legend, reflecting the concerns of the age. Arthur's sword Excalibur is another symbol that evolved over time. In some tales it comes from the Lady of the Lake. In others it appears in the stone. Regardless of its origin, it represents divine authority. It is not merely a weapon. It is a reminder that true leadership carries both power and responsibility. Excalibur shines with meaning because it is tied so closely to Arthur's identity. When he wields it, he is more than a warrior. He is a king chosen by destiny. The scabbard of Excalibur also held deep symbolic meaning. It is said that while Arthur wore it, he could not bleed in battle. This detail highlights a recurring theme in ancient myth. Power often comes at a cost, and protection can be lost through carelessness or betrayal. When the scabbard is stolen, the legend prepares us for Arthur's eventual tragedy. Even the greatest hero cannot escape fate once the protective signs weaken. As the legend expanded, Christian symbolism began to appear, weaving moral teachings into the narrative. The search for the Holy Grail became a central quest, reflecting a spiritual transformation within the storytelling tradition. Knights pursued purity, wisdom, and divine truth. This quest elevated the legend beyond earthly concerns, expanding it into the realm of spiritual aspiration. Yet the tale also acknowledged that such perfection is difficult to reach and often costs the seeker dearly. Characters like Galahad represented ideal purity, while others such as Gawain symbolized earthly honor. Lancelot's failure to achieve the Grail emphasized the conflict between human passion and divine purpose. These layers added profound depth to the legend, intertwining spiritual themes with the political and emotional drama already present. As we continue our journey into Arthur's world, we must recognize how the people of early Britain might have felt about such stories. They lived in a landscape shaped by conflict and uncertainty. Stories of a powerful, just leader would have provided hope and unity. Tales of magical intervention would have offered meaning in difficult times. Arthur's legend became a thread that connected people across regions and generations. Even after Norman conquerors reshaped Britain's political landscape, the legend persisted, adapting to new languages and literary styles. The Normans embraced the story, adding their own refinements. French Romance writers expanded the roles of knights and enhanced the themes of love and honor. Through this cross-cultural transmission, Arthur became not just a British hero but a European icon. Eventually the legend reached the hands of Geoffrey of Monmouth, whose work transformed Arthur from a vaguely referenced warrior into a fully realized king, complete with lineage, battles and grandeur. Geoffrey's writings blurred history and myth so effectively that many believed Arthur truly existed as described. This belief continued for centuries, influencing kings and commoners alike. Some rulers even attempted to connect their genealogy to Arthur, seeking legitimacy through association with the legendary king. As we reflect on all these layers, we begin to see why King Arthur has endured for so long. He is not confined to a single story or a single era. He exists in many forms, each shaped by the needs of the storytellers. This adaptability allows him to remain relevant as cultural values evolve. He can be a fierce warrior, a noble king, a tragic hero, or a symbol of hope. In each version he reflects something deeply human. His downfall is equally important to the legend. A perfect hero who never falters might entertain but would not inspire. Arthur's mistakes and vulnerabilities give his story emotional depth. They remind us that even great leaders struggle with choices that test their values. The conflict between personal loyalty and public duty, between love and responsibility, between fate and free will resonates across time because it reflects the human condition. As we continue our journey into the world of King Arthur, we step closer to the people whose lives shaped the rise and fall of his legendary kingdom. Myths do not stand alone. They grow through the characters who surround the hero and through the emotional bonds that bind them all together. Arthur's legend is rich with such figures, each with their own purpose, their own strengths and their own flaws. Together they form a reflection of the society that created them, revealing what that society valued, feared and hoped for. But before we explore these characters, we must understand something essential. The early medieval world did not create stories purely for entertainment. Stories were tools for teaching moral values, for inspiring unity and for preserving cultural identity. Arthur's companions, knights, advisors and enemies represent more than individuals. They embody ideals and struggles that resonated with the people who first told these tales. We begin with Merlin, the mysterious advisor whose presence is as vital to Arthur's rise as the sword in the stone itself. Merlin stands at the intersection of many traditions, blending ancient druidic roles with later medieval concepts of magic and prophecy. He is a figure who exists both inside and outside the human world. His knowledge is vast but often shrouded in ambiguity. He guides Arthur not simply through power but through wisdom. He sees potential where others see only an ordinary boy. And by helping Arthur ascend to the throne, Merlin fulfills a prophecy that intertwines destiny with leadership. Merlin's nature embodies the idea that knowledge can be both a gift and a burden. He understands the future yet cannot always prevent tragedy. This duality makes him one of the most profound figures in the legend. It also gives Arthur's rise a sense of inevitability. With Merlin at his side, Arthur becomes more than a leader chosen by men. He becomes a leader chosen by fate. And yet fate in this legend is not a force that guarantees success. Instead, it provides opportunity shaped by human choices. This distinction is crucial because it keeps Arthur human even as he walks within the realm of myth. Another character deeply woven into Arthur's story is Guinevere, his queen. She is one of the most complex figures in the entire corpus of Arthurian literature. Early tales portray her differently from later medieval romances. But regardless of the version, Guinevere symbolizes grace, internal conflict, and the emotional weight carried by those who live alongside great leaders. Her love for Arthur is genuine, yet her heart is drawn toward Lancelot, creating a conflict that echoes through the kingdom. This conflict is not simply a romantic subplot. It reveals something profound about the nature of leadership. Even the strongest king cannot control the hearts of those around him. Love, loyalty, and personal struggle shape the fate of the kingdom as much as battles and politics. Guinevere's actions reflect the tension between duty and desire, a theme that medieval audiences understood deeply. Her role in the legend forces us to confront a truth. The fragility of a kingdom often mirrors the fragility of human emotion. Beside Arthur stands Lancelot, the knight often described as the greatest warrior of his age. His skill on the battlefield is matched only by his loyalty to Arthur. Yet that loyalty is tested by his forbidden love for Guinevere. This conflict transforms him from a symbol of perfection into a symbol of human imperfection. His struggle reveals the tension between honor and passion. It is easy to praise loyalty when the heart is untroubled. It is far harder when loyalty clashes with desire. Lancelot embodies this clash, making him one of the most relatable figures in the legend. The presence of Lancelot introduces a theme that echoes throughout the Arthurian tradition. Even the most virtuous individuals face moments of weakness. And sometimes the consequences of those moments ripple outward, affecting not only the individual but the entire community. Lancelot's choices do not simply threaten his own honor. They threaten the unity of the Round Table and the stability of Arthur's kingdom. Through him, the storytellers explore the idea that greatness carries a heavy burden. A knight's mistakes can be as destructive as a king's misjudgment. Gawain, another of Arthur's knights, represents a different kind of virtue. He is loyal, brave, and deeply committed to his king. Unlike Lancelot, whose internal struggle often clouds his decisions, Gawain's loyalty remains firm. He becomes a symbol of steadfast duty. In many tales, Gawain's strength comes not from unmatched skill but from unwavering resolve. He fights for the king because he believes in the ideals Arthur upholds. His character reminds audiences that loyalty grounded in principle can endure even in times of darkness. Yet even Gawain is not without flaws. Some stories depict him as impulsive or overly eager for battle. Others show him struggling with pride. These imperfections reinforce a core lesson of the Arthurian tradition. Virtue is complex, shaped by both strengths and weaknesses. No character in the legend embodies pure perfection. Even the noblest knights are human, and it is this humanity that gives the legend its emotional depth. Another significant figure is Morgana, often portrayed as Arthur's half-sister. Her character shifts dramatically between different versions of the story, sometimes appearing as a healer, sometimes as a villain. In many popular tellings, she becomes a symbol of dark magic, revenge, and manipulation. Her presence in the legend introduces the idea that danger can arise from within a family as easily as from a foreign enemy. Morgana's complex motivations reveal how bitterness, envy, and ambition can twist relationships into destructive forces. In some stories, she seeks to undermine Arthur's rule by exploiting the weaknesses of those around him. In others, she orchestrates events that lead to the kingdom's downfall. Yet even in her darkest portrayals, Morgana reflects the intricate emotional landscape of family ties. She is not a distant enemy but someone connected to Arthur by blood. This connection intensifies the drama of their conflict. It also emphasizes a recurring theme of the legend. The greatest threats to a kingdom sometimes come from those closest to the throne. Mordred, one of the most tragic and powerful figures in the Arthurian tradition, stands at the center of the legend's final catastrophe. Often described as Arthur's son born from circumstances that reflect confusion and tragedy, Mordred carries within him the weight of a destiny shaped long before his birth. He is both victim and villain, shaped by forces beyond his control yet responsible for choices that lead to destruction. His rebellion against Arthur results in the final battle at Camlann, a moment that marks the end of the Golden Age. Mordred's character embodies the theme of inevitable conflict between generations. He represents the darkness that rises when trust collapses and ambition overshadows loyalty. His betrayal forces Arthur to confront not only an enemy but a reflection of his own flaws. The very existence of Mordred reveals a paradox at the heart of the legend. A great kingdom can fall not through invasion from the outside but through the unraveling of relationships within its walls. Now that we understand the deeply human characters surrounding Arthur, we move into the beating core of the legend. The events that shaped his rise and his kingdom's fall. We begin with the moment that signaled the beginning of Arthur's journey. The sword in the stone. The story unfolds with an air of quiet expectation. After the death of the previous king, chaos threatens to engulf the land. Rival lords claim the throne and violence spreads as factions struggle for power. In the midst of this unrest, a strange stone appears in a churchyard with a sword embedded in it. Engraved upon the blade is a simple declaration. Whoever draws this sword from the stone is the rightful king of Britain. Many men strong and ambitious attempt the feat, but none succeed. Arthur, a young boy unaware of his true heritage, approaches the sword without ambition. His intentions are simple. He seeks a sword for his foster brother Kay, who has mistakenly left his own weapon behind. Arthur grasps the hilt, and to the astonishment of all, the sword slides free effortlessly. This moment signals a profound truth woven into the legend. Greatness is not always claimed by force. Sometimes it is revealed through humility and purity of heart. The sword in the stone becomes a powerful symbol of destiny. Arthur is not chosen because of strength or lineage known to the public. He is chosen because fate deems him worthy. Yet the story also teaches that destiny alone does not guarantee success. Arthur must earn the loyalty of his people through action. Many nobles resist his claim to the throne, believing a young boy unworthy of leadership. But through courage, wisdom, and guidance from Merlin, Arthur proves himself again and again until he is finally accepted as king. Once crowned, Arthur sets out to unite the fractured land. His early reign is marked by battles against rebellious lords who refuse to acknowledge his authority. These struggles highlight a central truth about leadership. Authority must be balanced with justice. Arthur does not seek to dominate his opponents through cruelty. Instead, he strives to create a kingdom where fairness and honor guide decisions. His victories reflect both tactical brilliance and moral conviction. These early battles prepare the stage for the establishment of Arthur's most enduring legacy. The Round Table. Unlike traditional councils dominated by hierarchy, the Round Table embodies the idea that all knights seated there share equal standing. No one sits above another. This radical concept symbolizes Arthur's vision of leadership founded on equality and shared responsibility. It appeals to some of the greatest warriors in the land who join Arthur not for wealth but for the chance to uphold noble ideals. The Knights of the Round Table undertake quests that shape the identity of Arthur's kingdom. They search for lost treasures, rescue the innocent, confront supernatural threats, and uphold justice wherever darkness spreads. Each quest reinforces the values that Arthur champions: courage, compassion, and loyalty. Through these stories, the legend explores the moral landscape of knighthood. A knight's worth is measured not only by skill in battle but by dedication to virtue. The Round Table becomes a beacon of hope. But its unity is fragile. As new characters enter the narrative, the emotional tensions within the court grow stronger. The arrival of Lancelot in particular heightens both admiration and unease. His unmatched prowess earns him a prominent place among Arthur's knights, and his friendship with the king deepens. Yet beneath the surface, a dangerous attraction grows between him and Guinevere. Their bond remains hidden at first, but as time passes, the tension becomes a shadow lingering over the kingdom. At the same time, political challenges test Arthur's rule. External enemies threaten the borders while internal factions question his decisions. The pressures of leadership weigh heavily upon him. Merlin warns him of dangers ahead, but even Merlin cannot prevent every trial. The balance that Arthur strives to maintain becomes increasingly difficult as personal emotions and public responsibilities collide. One of the most defining quests undertaken by Arthur's knights is the search for the Holy Grail. This journey marks a turning point in the legend. The Grail represents not only a holy relic but the pursuit of spiritual perfection. While many knights embark on the quest, only a few come close to achieving it. Galahad, the purest of them, symbolizes the ideal knight untouched by earthly desires. His success highlights the theme that true spiritual fulfillment requires purity of heart. For others, such as Lancelot, the Grail quest becomes a mirror reflecting their internal struggles. Lancelot's inability to achieve the Grail reveals the cost of his hidden love for Guinevere. This failure adds emotional weight to the story, underscoring the idea that even the greatest heroes are hindered by personal conflicts. The Grail quest ultimately weakens the unity of the Round Table, as many knights do not return or return changed by their experiences. While the knights pursue spiritual enlightenment, political cracks deepen within the kingdom. Morgana seizes every opportunity to manipulate events from behind the scenes. Her influence sows distrust and resentment among Arthur's allies. She thrives in the spaces where uncertainty festers, using her knowledge of magic and human nature to shift alliances and intensify conflict. Her presence is a reminder that danger often lurks in the shadows long before it reveals itself openly. As the kingdom's internal struggles escalate, the forbidden love between Lancelot and Guinevere finally erupts into the open. This revelation shatters the fragile foundation of trust that the Round Table depends upon. Arthur finds himself trapped in a painful dilemma, torn between his duty as a king and his love for his queen. The law demands justice, yet his heart demands mercy. His inability to reconcile these opposing forces weakens his authority and accelerates the kingdom's unraveling. Civil war breaks out as factions form around Arthur and Lancelot. Brothers in arms become enemies. The unity that once defined the kingdom cracks under the weight of betrayal and misunderstanding. At the same time, Mordred steps forward to seize power. Arthur's absence during the conflict with Lancelot gives Mordred the opportunity to claim the throne. His ambition combined with political chaos sets the stage for the final confrontation. The battlefield at Camlann becomes the setting for the legend's tragic conclusion. Arthur faces Mordred in a brutal conflict that symbolizes the culmination of all the tensions that have plagued his reign. The battle is fierce, devastating, and filled with profound emotional weight. Mordred's presence on the field represents the ultimate betrayal. Arthur's clash with him is not simply a fight for the kingdom's future, but a confrontation with the consequences of past actions. During the battle, Arthur strikes down Mordred, but not without receiving a mortal wound. The moment carries the full resonance of tragedy. A great king falls not because of external invasion, but because the structures of loyalty and trust that once upheld his kingdom have collapsed. As Arthur lies wounded, he is carried by loyal companions to the shores of a mysterious lake. A boat appears carrying robed figures who take him to Avalon, a place suspended between myth and eternity. Here Arthur's story shifts from historical tragedy to mythic promise. It is said that he will return when Britain needs him most. This promise has echoed through centuries, giving the legend an enduring sense of hope. With the fall of Arthur, the golden age of Camelot fades into memory. Yet the legend does not end with loss. Instead, it transforms. It becomes a mirror for every generation, reflecting their struggles, hopes, and longing for ideal leadership. The tale of Camelot's rise and fall becomes a powerful reminder of the fragility of human achievement. Even the greatest visions can crumble when unity falters and personal conflicts overshadow collective purpose. To understand why the legend of King Arthur has survived for so many centuries, we must explore the ideas and meanings woven beneath the surface of the story. Myths endure not because they recount events as they happened, but because they reveal truths about the human experience. The Arthurian legend is rich with such truths, and they appear in the form of symbols, themes, and emotional lessons that speak across time. One of the most powerful themes in the Arthurian tradition is the nature of leadership. Arthur rises from obscurity to unify a fractured land. His story suggests that true leadership emerges not from birthright alone, but from character. The sword in the stone symbolizes this idea. It is a test not of strength but of worthiness. The ease with which Arthur draws the sword reveals that greatness lies in humility and purity of heart. The legend teaches that leaders are not defined by power but by the principles they uphold. Yet the story also explores the burden of leadership. Arthur's decisions shape not only his own fate but the fate of an entire kingdom. His struggle to balance justice with compassion reflects a universal challenge faced by leaders in every era. When he is forced to judge those he loves most deeply, his humanity becomes both his strength and his vulnerability. This tension makes him more than a mythical hero. It makes him relatable even to modern audiences. Another central theme is the fragility of unity. The Round Table begins as a symbol of equality, harmony, and shared purpose. It brings together knights from different regions united under a single vision. But unity is difficult to maintain. Personal conflicts, hidden desires, and unresolved tensions slowly weaken the foundation of the Round Table. The legend offers a clear message. Even the strongest alliances can crumble when trust is broken. Unity requires constant commitment and vigilance. The relationship between Arthur, Lancelot, and Guinevere illustrates how personal emotions can have vast political consequences. Their love triangle represents more than romantic turmoil. It symbolizes the way private choices intersect with public duty. When Lancelot and Guinevere give in to their feelings, the repercussions ripple outward, affecting the entire kingdom. The storytellers used this emotional conflict to show that even heroes cannot escape the consequences of their actions. The legend invites audiences to reflect on how loyalty, desire, and responsibility shape the world around them. Betrayal is another recurring theme in the legend. Morgana's schemes, Lancelot's love, Mordred's rebellion all contribute to Arthur's downfall. These betrayals are not portrayed as simple acts of malice. Instead, they emerge from complex human emotions such as jealousy, fear, ambition, and longing. This nuance offers a profound insight into the human condition. Betrayal often arises not from evil intent but from unresolved pain or misguided desire. The legend uses these characters to illustrate the dangers of emotional wounds left untended. The theme of fate also holds a central place in the story. From the moment Arthur draws the sword in the stone, his destiny appears predetermined. Merlin's prophecies shape the expectations of those around the young king. Yet fate in this legend does not remove personal responsibility. It signals the path ahead but does not force individuals to walk it without choice. Arthur's decisions still matter. Lancelot's choices still carry weight. Guinevere's heart still influences the kingdom's future. The tension between destiny and free will adds depth to the narrative, reminding audiences that even those guided by prophecy must take ownership of their actions. A different layer of the story explores the pursuit of perfection. The Grail quest represents this theme most clearly. The knights who pursue the Grail seek not only a holy object but a state of spiritual purity. Their journey reveals that perfection is difficult to achieve and even more difficult to sustain. Only Galahad, the purest among them, succeeds fully in the quest. For others, the quest becomes a lesson in humility. Lancelot, for example, learns that personal flaws can create barriers between oneself and higher ideals. The story uses these quests to reflect the medieval belief that human beings are constantly torn between earthly desires and spiritual aspirations. The symbols found throughout the legend further deepen its meaning. Excalibur, the sword given to Arthur by the Lady of the Lake, represents divine authority. It signifies that kingship is not merely a political role but a sacred responsibility. The sword's brilliance reflects the purity of Arthur's purpose. But when the scabbard is lost, the protection it offers disappears. This loss symbolizes the gradual unraveling of Arthur's power. It shows that leadership can be weakened not only by external threats but by internal lapses. Camelot itself symbolizes the ideal society. It is a place where justice reigns and noble values are upheld. But Camelot is not depicted as perfect. Its beauty is fragile, dependent on the integrity of those who live within its walls. When the knights falter, the kingdom weakens. This metaphor reflects a timeless truth. A society is only as strong as the values practiced by its people. Camelot's fall reminds audiences that ideals must be maintained through action, not merely admired in theory. Avalon, the mystical island where Arthur is taken after the Battle of Camlann, serves as a symbol of hope, renewal, and timeless possibility. It represents the idea that heroes may rest but not disappear entirely. Avalon keeps the promise that Arthur will return when his people need him most. This idea resonates deeply with cultures that experience hardship or uncertainty. It embodies the belief that hope persists even in the darkest moments. As we analyze these themes, we gain a deeper understanding of why the Arthurian legend continues to resonate. It offers more than a sequence of events. It offers a reflection of human nature. The struggles the characters face are not bound to the medieval world. They echo in every era. The desire for unity, the complexities of love, the burdens of leadership, the sting of betrayal, the search for meaning, these are experiences shared by people across history. The legend remains alive because it speaks to these universal emotions. The themes explored in the story have also influenced countless works of literature, art, and film. Writers throughout the centuries have drawn inspiration from Arthur's world to explore their own ideas. Medieval poets used the legend to teach moral lessons about chivalry and honor. Renaissance scholars examined it to reflect on political ideals. 19th-century authors revived the story to explore themes of purity, responsibility, and the decline of noble ideals. Modern storytellers adapt the legend to examine questions of identity, justice, and leadership in our contemporary world. One of the reasons the legend's influence is so widespread is its adaptability. Different eras emphasize different aspects of the story. Some focus on the tragedy of Arthur's fall while others highlight the romance of Lancelot and Guinevere or the magic of Merlin. This flexibility allows the story to evolve without losing its core message. Each generation reshapes the legend to reflect its own values and concerns. This continual adaptation ensures that the story remains relevant. To understand the cultural impact of the Arthurian legend more deeply, we must look at how it shaped medieval identity. In the Middle Ages, Arthur became a symbol of ideal kingship. Monarchs claimed descent from Arthur to legitimize their rule. Knights modeled their behavior after the chivalric codes associated with the Round Table. The legend helped define what it meant to be a noble warrior during a time when warfare and social hierarchy dominated daily life. Arthur's victories against foreign invaders also fueled a sense of national pride, giving Britain a heroic figure to rally around. The legend's influence extended far beyond England. French writers added layers of romance and refinement to the story, expanding its reach across Europe. German poets adopted the Grail quest as part of their own literary tradition. Scandinavian traditions absorbed aspects of Arthur's character into their heroic narratives. This widespread adoption reflects the story's universal appeal. It speaks to themes that resonate across cultures: courage, love, honor, betrayal, and the longing for a just ruler. In the modern world, the legend continues to inspire reinterpretation. Films, television series, novels, and even musical works draw from Arthur's story. Each adaptation highlights different elements. Some portray Camelot as a utopian kingdom lost to human weakness. Others emphasize magic and destiny. Some explore the psychological complexity of the characters, revealing the inner struggles that shape their decisions. These variations show that the legend remains fertile ground for creative exploration. The Arthurian myth has also influenced political and philosophical thought. Leaders have invoked Arthur's name to symbolize unity and moral authority. Thinkers have examined the legend to explore questions about the nature of power and responsibility. The image of the Round Table has been adopted by organizations seeking to promote equality and cooperation. This widespread use demonstrates that Arthur's story is not confined to the past. It shapes the present in subtle yet significant ways. While the cultural influence of the legend is vast, its emotional impact is just as profound. The story of Arthur invites audiences to imagine a world where noble ideals guide human behavior. It encourages reflection on the values that sustain societies. Courage, compassion, integrity, and loyalty are not abstract principles in this legend. They are embodied by characters whose choices determine the fate of the kingdom. This embodiment makes the lessons of the story accessible and powerful. At the same time, the tragedy of Arthur's fall serves as a reminder that ideals are fragile. They must be protected through vigilance and humility. When pride, jealousy, and division take root, even the greatest kingdoms can crumble. This message remains relevant in every era and every community. It reminds us that the health of a society depends on the character of its leaders and the integrity of its people. As we continue through the narrative and analysis, we begin to see that the legend of King Arthur functions almost like a moral tapestry. Characters represent different human qualities, both noble and flawed. Events reveal the consequences of choices. Symbols guide the audience toward deeper understanding. These elements are woven together to create a story that is both entertaining and instructive. It engages the heart while challenging the mind. This dual function, myth as entertainment and myth as moral instruction, explains why the Arthurian legend became one of the most enduring stories in Western culture. For medieval audiences, it offered guidance in a world of conflict and uncertainty. For later generations, it provided inspiration during periods of social change. For modern audiences, it offers reflection on timeless human struggles. The story's flexibility allows it to remain meaningful even as the world around it transforms. Another reason for the legend's enduring power is the emotional depth of its characters. Arthur is not portrayed as a flawless leader. His failures make him relatable. Lancelot's inner conflict reveals the tension between loyalty and desire. Guinevere's emotional journey highlights the complexities of love and duty. Morgana's bitterness reflects the destructive power of jealousy. Mordred's rebellion illustrates the consequences of resentment and ambition. These emotional truths give the legend lasting resonance. The supernatural elements of the story also contribute to its appeal. Magic in the Arthurian world is not simply a vehicle for spectacle. It symbolizes the mystery and unpredictability of life. Merlin's visions remind audiences that humans cannot control every aspect of their destiny. The Lady of the Lake embodies the idea that power often emerges from unexpected sources. The Grail represents the quest for deeper meaning. By blending the natural and supernatural, the legend captures the wonder and complexity of human existence. As we explore the deeper layers of the story, we begin to understand why Camelot remains a powerful symbol in modern imagination. Camelot represents the possibility of a perfect society. A place where justice reigns and noble ideals flourish. Though the kingdom falls, its memory endures. This symbol encourages reflection on what a just society might look like and what values are necessary to sustain it. It challenges audiences to consider how idealism can coexist with human imperfection. The fall of Camelot offers an equally important lesson. It shows that even the most noble societies are vulnerable. A kingdom built on ideals must be protected through constant effort. The smallest fracture in trust can grow into a chasm that consumes everything. This message remains strikingly relevant. It speaks to the fragility of human institutions and the importance of moral responsibility. The Arthurian legend also highlights the theme of legacy. Arthur's physical reign ends at Camlann, but his influence extends far beyond his lifetime. His story continues to shape the values of future generations. This focus on legacy reminds audiences that the impact of a leader is measured not only by achievements but by the ideals they pass on. Arthur's enduring presence in cultural memory reflects the power of a life guided by noble purpose. The promise of Arthur's return underscores this emphasis on legacy. It suggests that ideals never fully die. They remain dormant, waiting for the moment when they are needed again. This idea provides hope during times of hardship. It encourages belief in renewal and transformation. The legend assures audiences that even when darkness falls, light may eventually return. As we absorb these insights from the story, we begin to understand how myth operates as a bridge between the past and the present. It carries ancient wisdom into modern consciousness. It allows contemporary audiences to explore universal questions through the lens of narrative. The Arthurian legend is especially effective in this role because it balances complexity with accessibility. It invites readers and listeners to reflect without demanding specialized knowledge. It speaks to the heart while enriching the mind. The cultural impact of the Arthurian legend is one of the most remarkable aspects of its long history. For over 1,000 years, this story has shaped the imaginations of writers, artists, leaders, and everyday people. Its influence reaches far beyond the boundaries of Britain, permeating European culture and eventually spreading across the world. To understand why the legend of King Arthur continues to thrive, we must explore how it has been interpreted, reimagined, and celebrated through different historical periods. The earliest written references to Arthur appear in medieval Welsh texts, where he is portrayed as a courageous warrior fighting against supernatural forces and foreign enemies. These early fragments capture the spirit of a leader defending his homeland during a time of chaos. They reflect the real anxieties of early medieval communities who faced constant threats from invading forces. Arthur became a heroic symbol of resistance and unity. His name carried hope in an age defined by uncertainty. As the legend entered new literary traditions, it began to expand. Geoffrey of Monmouth, a 12th-century cleric, played a crucial role in shaping the version of Arthur that would dominate Western culture for centuries. In his work, Geoffrey presented Arthur as a great king who united Britain, defeated invaders, and built a powerful empire. His portrayal blended history and myth, creating a narrative that felt both ancient and authoritative. This interpretation resonated deeply with medieval audiences hungry for stories that linked their present world with a heroic past. The popularity of Geoffrey's writings inspired other authors to develop the legend further. In France, writers added elements of chivalry, romance, and courtly love, transforming the legend into a sophisticated literary cycle. It was during this period that characters like Lancelot gained prominence. French poets introduced the idea of the Holy Grail, integrating Christian symbolism into the story. These additions enriched the legend and expanded its thematic depth. Arthur's court became a stage for exploring the ideals of knighthood, purity, devotion, and moral struggle. German writers adopted the Grail narrative and infused it with philosophical and poetic complexity. Scandinavian and Celtic traditions merged aspects of Arthurian lore with their own heroic myths. The result was a tapestry of interconnected stories that varied from region to region yet remained unified by the central figure of King Arthur. This widespread literary development shows how deeply the legend resonated across cultures. Each society found in Arthur a reflection of its own values and aspirations. The legend experienced a major revival in the 19th century due to the work of poets and novelists who sought to reconnect with medieval themes. Alfred Lord Tennyson's poems brought Arthur back into the literary spotlight, portraying him as a noble yet tragic hero. Tennyson depicted Camelot as a symbol of human idealism destined to be challenged by the imperfections of human nature. His work presented the legend in a romantic and moralistic light that appealed to Victorian audiences grappling with questions of morality, honor, and progress. During this era, Arthur became more than a character from myth. He became a symbol of national identity. British leaders and scholars invoked his story to promote unity, pride, and moral excellence. Schools taught the virtues of the Round Table as examples of how society should function. Artists painted scenes of Camelot, Arthur's coronation, the Lady of the Lake, and the fall at Camlann. These images captured the imagination of the public and solidified Arthur as an icon of British heritage. The Arthurian legend also influenced political thought. Some leaders adopted the symbolism of the Round Table to represent councils based on equality and cooperation. The idea of a king guided by wisdom rather than tyranny inspired discussions about just governance. Arthur's role as a unifying figure offered a model for addressing political tensions and national divisions. As the modern era unfolded, new interpretations of the legend emerged. Novelists explored the psychological dimensions of the characters, portraying Arthur, Lancelot, Guinevere, and Mordred with emotional complexity. Filmmakers adapted the story to reflect contemporary themes, exploring questions about destiny, identity, courage, and sacrifice. Television series presented Arthur as a young and inexperienced leader learning to navigate the challenges of kingship. These adaptations reveal the legend's flexibility. It can be reshaped to fit different eras while retaining its essential meaning. The 20th and 21st centuries brought even broader reinterpretations. Some stories emphasized the magical elements, portraying Merlin as a powerful sorcerer guiding Arthur through extraordinary adventures. Others highlighted the political struggles within Camelot, focusing on the tension between idealism and realism. Modern writers often reimagined Guinevere, Morgana, and other women of the legend with greater depth, giving them agency and exploring their perspectives. These reinterpretations demonstrate how myth evolves to reflect changing social values. The Arthurian legend also made its way into popular culture beyond literature and film. Musicians composed operas and songs inspired by the legend. Dramatists created stage productions exploring the emotional and moral struggles of the characters. Artists continued to paint scenes of Camelot and Avalon, capturing the mystic beauty associated with Arthur's world. Even comic books and animated series introduced Arthurian themes to new generations, reinforcing the legend's power to adapt and endure. One of the most remarkable aspects of the legend's cultural influence is the symbolism of the Round Table. This simple image of a circular table where no knight holds a position above another has become a universal representation of equality, collaboration, and shared authority. It is used in business, politics, education, and social movements to emphasize fairness and cooperation. Few symbols from medieval literature have achieved such wide recognition. The Round Table endures because it captures a timeless ideal. That true leadership invites participation rather than domination. Camelot too remains a powerful symbol. It represents not just a kingdom but an ideal of harmony, justice, and noble aspiration. In times of social or political difficulty, people often evoke the memory of Camelot as a reminder of what society can strive to become. The image of Camelot inspires hope because it encapsulates the dream of a world guided by compassion, honor, and unity. Even though Camelot falls in the legend, its memory continues to offer strength and direction. The characters of the legend have also become cultural archetypes. Merlin represents wisdom and guidance. Lancelot embodies conflicted loyalty and internal struggle. Guinevere symbolizes the complexity of love and duty. Morgana represents the destructive power of resentment. Mordred stands for ambition twisted into rebellion. These archetypes appear in countless modern stories, not always by name but in the emotional roles they play. They illustrate how deeply the Arthurian legend has shaped the storytelling patterns of Western culture. Beyond literature and art, the legend has influenced how societies imagine heroism. Arthur is portrayed not simply as a warrior but as a leader who listens, encourages, and guides. His role reflects the ideal of a just ruler who places the needs of his people above his own desires. This portrayal has shaped cultural expectations of leadership both in fiction and in reality. People look to Arthur as an example of how leaders might unite fragmented communities through fairness and moral conviction. The spiritual elements of the legend also resonate deeply with audiences. The Holy Grail, a symbol of divine grace, inspires reflection on the quest for meaning and purpose. The Grail quest encourages individuals to consider what personal limitations prevent them from reaching their highest potential. This spiritual symbolism has influenced religious literature, philosophical writings, and modern psychological interpretations. The Grail serves as a metaphor for the human search for fulfillment and enlightenment. As society changes, so too do the interpretations of the legend. Modern audiences often view Camelot through a lens of nostalgia, recognizing it as a hopeful vision rather than a historical reality. Films and books sometimes portray Arthur's kingdom as an early experiment in democracy where ideas of justice and fairness are tested against human flaws. This perspective allows the legend to speak to modern conversations about government, social responsibility, and moral leadership. In fantasy literature, the Arthurian influence is unmistakable. Many modern series draw upon themes of chosen heroes, magical mentorship, mystical swords, and quests for sacred relics. These elements echo the structure of the Arthurian world, showing how deeply the legend has shaped the foundations of the fantasy genre. Even stories that do not directly reference Arthur often carry the imprint of his narrative. The legend's reach extends into education as well. Teachers use Arthurian stories to introduce students to medieval history, literature, and cultural studies. The characters and events provide accessible entry points for discussing themes such as leadership, loyalty, justice, and moral conflict. Students connect with the emotional struggles within the legend, making it easier to explore complex social and ethical questions. Through these discussions, the legend continues to shape young minds, encouraging reflection and critical thinking. Arthur's influence also appears in modern political speeches, media commentary, and cultural discourse. Public figures sometimes reference Arthur to evoke ideals of unity, vision, or moral leadership. These references show that the legend functions as a shared cultural language. Its symbols and stories are widely understood, making them effective tools for communication. The image of Arthur rising to defend his people or of Camelot shining as a beacon of justice carries powerful emotional weight. Another important aspect of the legend's cultural impact is its ability to inspire hope during dark times. Throughout history, communities facing crisis have turned to stories of heroic leadership to strengthen their resolve. Arthur's promise to return when Britain needs him most became a symbol of renewal. This belief offered comfort to people experiencing war, social upheaval, or political instability. It reminded them that even when the world seems fractured, heroes may rise again. In examining the legend's ongoing influence, we find that it continues to adapt to contemporary concerns. Modern reinterpretations explore themes such as identity, gender equality, racial diversity, and social justice. Writers and creators reimagine characters to reflect the complexities of modern society. They use Arthur's story as a canvas upon which new ideas can be explored. This creative evolution keeps the legend alive, ensuring that it remains relevant for new generations. As we move toward the final reflections of this long narrative exploration, we begin to see the full scope of Arthur's legacy. His story is not confined to the dusty pages of medieval manuscripts. It lives in the imagination of artists, thinkers, leaders, and dreamers. It resonates because it captures essential truths about human nature and societal aspiration. The legend endures because it invites us to reflect on who we are and who we might become. With all the layers of history, symbolism, emotion, and cultural significance laid before us, we now reach the final stage of this journey. A moment to reflect upon why the story of Arthur continues to captivate audiences across centuries. A moment to understand how this ancient myth still speaks with urgency and power to the modern world. and a moment to recognize that the legend of King Arthur is not simply a tale of the past. It is a living story carried forward by every person who imagines a world guided by honor, unity, and hope. As we approach the conclusion of this long journey through the legend of King Arthur, we return to a question that has echoed quietly throughout this exploration. Why does this story endure? Why do generations separated by centuries still feel drawn to the image of a young king rising from obscurity to lead his people toward unity, justice, and nobility? The answers lie deep within the human spirit and within the timeless truths that this myth brings to life. The story of Arthur resonates because it reflects the universal human longing for a leader who embodies wisdom, strength, and fairness. In a world often defined by conflict, division, and uncertainty, the idea of a just ruler who seeks not personal gain but the well-being of his people holds an undeniable appeal. Arthur represents the hope that leadership rooted in integrity can transform chaos into harmony. This hope is not limited to ancient Britain. It speaks to every society that has wrestled with instability and desired a guiding light. Yet Arthur is not merely a symbol of perfect leadership. His story includes mistakes, failures, and heartbreak. He struggles with dilemmas that test his character and his resolve. These flaws matter just as much as his strengths. They reveal that even the greatest of leaders remain human. They must navigate the complex terrain of loyalty, love, responsibility, and fate. This portrayal invites audiences to see themselves within the legend. It reminds us that growth often emerges through hardship and that ideals must be pursued despite human imperfection. Another reason the legend endures is its exploration of the consequences of choices. Every major moment in the story, whether triumphant or tragic, arises from decisions made by the characters. The love between Lancelot and Guinevere, the schemes of Morgana, the ambition of Mordred, the warnings of Merlin, the hopes of the knights, these human elements shape the destiny of Camelot. The legend teaches that actions carry weight and that even minor decisions can ripple outward in ways we cannot predict. It encourages reflection on the moral complexity of life and the importance of wisdom in choice making. The emotional depth of the legend also contributes to its lasting impact. Audiences connect with Lancelot's inner conflict, Guinevere's struggle between love and duty, Gawain's unyielding loyalty, Morgana's bitterness, and Arthur's quiet sorrow as his kingdom begins to fracture. These emotional threads transform the legend into more than a mythical adventure. They create a tapestry of human experience that resonates across time. The story becomes a mirror through which listeners see their own vulnerabilities, hopes, and regrets. Magic plays a vital role as well, adding layers of mystery and wonder to the story. Merlin's prophecies, the Lady of the Lake, the Enchanted Sword, and the mystical Isle of Avalon enrich the narrative with elements that transcend ordinary experience. These supernatural components invite the imagination to wander beyond the boundaries of the visible world. They remind us that myths serve not only to instruct but also to inspire. They encourage us to believe in possibilities beyond what we can explain. This balance between the earthly and the mystical gives the legend a sense of depth that continues to captivate audiences. The fall of Camelot is one of the most poignant aspects of the legend. It reveals the painful truth that even the noblest societies are vulnerable. Greatness can falter when trust breaks, when pride overshadows humility, and when unity gives way to division. Camelot falls not because Arthur is weak but because human frailty exists even in the presence of noble ideals. This message carries a powerful emotional weight. It warns that ideals can crumble if not protected by courage, integrity, and collective effort. At the same time, it offers a reminder that even in downfall there is meaning. The memory of Camelot inspires future generations to strive for better. The final departure of Arthur to Avalon deepens the legend's hold on the imagination. Rather than ending with death, the story leaves space for hope. Arthur does not vanish completely. He rests in a realm beyond mortal reach, waiting for a moment when his people may need him again. This promise of return embodies the belief that ideals do not die even when circumstances grow dark. It reflects the resilient human desire to believe that renewal is possible. When faced with adversity, people often look for symbols of hope. Arthur becomes such a symbol. His possible return transforms him into an eternal guardian of the values he fought to uphold. The legend endures also because it invites interpretation. Over centuries, readers and storytellers have reshaped it to reflect their own concerns. Some emphasize the tragedy, others the romance, others the spiritual quest. This diversity of interpretation ensures that Arthur's story remains relevant to every era. The legend is not fixed. It evolves, absorbing new meanings as society changes. Its adaptability makes it a living story rather than a relic of the past. The story of Arthur also resonates because it captures the tension between individual desire and collective responsibility. Characters like Lancelot and Guinevere face emotional struggles that place personal longing in conflict with social duty. Their experiences reflect challenges that every generation faces. The legend does not offer simple answers. Instead, it presents the reality that choices often bring both joy and sorrow. It encourages compassion for the imperfections that define human life. Leadership, identity, loyalty, and destiny — these themes lie at the core of the legend and continue to speak to audiences around the world. In times of political uncertainty, people revisit the image of Arthur as a model of wise and just leadership. In times of social change, they look to Camelot as a symbol of possibility. In moments of personal struggle, they find comfort in the emotional journeys of the characters. The legend does not prescribe how to live. Instead, it offers a space for reflection, guiding each listener toward their own insights. As we reflect on the cultural significance of the legend, it becomes clear that Arthur's influence extends into modern values as well. The idea of a leader chosen for virtue rather than privilege resonates in discussions about fairness, justice, and democracy. The concept of a round table where all voices are equal shapes conversations about leadership and cooperation. The Grail quest continues to inspire individuals to pursue higher purpose and spiritual growth. These ideals connect the ancient legend to modern aspirations. The legend's power also lies in its storytelling structure. It weaves together adventure, romance, tragedy, and moral reflection in a way that appeals to a wide range of audiences. It offers dramatic battles, heartfelt confessions, moments of wonder, and moments of sorrow. This balance creates an emotional journey that sustains attention and invites deep reflection. Stories that endure across centuries do so because they balance entertainment with meaning. The Arthurian legend exemplifies this balance. As we reach the end of this 2-hour exploration, we return to the beginning, where we imagined a Britain caught between the remnants of a fallen empire and the uncertainty of a new age. In that landscape, the story of a young king rising to unite a fractured land captured the hearts of its people. Over time, the story grew, expanding into one of the richest legends in human history. It continued to evolve, shaped by poets, knights, scholars, and dreamers. And today it remains alive because it continues to speak to the same hopes and fears that shaped its origins. The story of King Arthur reminds us that the quest for justice and unity is ongoing. It teaches that the strength of a community lies not in the walls that surround it, but in the values that guide it. It warns that even the greatest societies can fall when trust erodes. It assures us that hope endures even in the darkest moments. And it invites us to believe that leadership grounded in virtue can rise from the most unexpected places. As we look back across the arc of Arthur's journey, from the sword in the stone to the golden age of Camelot, from the joys of unity to the sorrow of betrayal, from the final battle at Camlann to the mysterious voyage to Avalon, we find a story that reflects both the triumph and tragedy of the human experience. It reflects our desire for greatness, our struggle with imperfection, and our hope for renewal. Arthur's legend endures because it is not simply a story about a king. It is a story about what we aspire to become. It asks us to imagine a world guided by honor and compassion. It challenges us to confront our own weaknesses. It inspires us to seek unity even when division seems inevitable. And it reminds us that hope shines brightest when born from struggle. As this story comes to a close, we are left with a final image. The mist-covered Isle of Avalon, where Arthur rests in timeless stillness. His sword lies beside him, his wounds healing beyond the reach of mortal time. The world he once knew has changed, yet the ideals he embodied continue to echo across centuries. Somewhere in the distant horizon, a dawn waits to break. And when the people of Britain, or any people anywhere, face a moment when darkness seems overwhelming, the legend promises that he may rise again. Until that moment comes, the story of King Arthur remains alive in every telling, in every interpretation, and in every listener who feels stirred by the dream of a better world. It is a reminder that myths do not fade. They endure wherever human beings seek meaning, courage, and hope. And so the legend continues, carried forward not only by scholars and storytellers, but by all who believe in the enduring power of noble ideals.